We're officially halfway through the 2020s decade, and it's time to reveal our lists for the 25 best rap albums of the decade so far. So let us know in the comments, guys, what's your pick for the best rap album of the 2020s up to this point? And if it's your first time watching, smash that subscribe button for more hip-hop content. This is interesting, bro, because I feel like the more digging I did when it came to putting these picks together, the more I realized how solid this decade's been up to this point.
So much quality. And you know what? Looking back on my top 10 songs, which, by the way, you guys can access on the channel. It's available on the main NFR podcast channel. A lot of those songs lie within these albums.
Yeah, for sure.
So going through my old list, going through even my top 10 songs of the 20s decade so far, I was like, you know what? I'm cool with this. I felt comfortable with my list. I will say this, though. The way that I kind of formed my list today, I had a huge-ass list.
Same.
I had a list of maybe 50 different albums, more or less, right? And then it was picking and choosing. It was like, okay, like what's going 1, 2, 3? I don't like this there. I'm not sure about this. And then you play the nitpicking game, right? So I will say this. Honestly, for the most part, Selection 17 and Selection 14 are probably on the same level.
Yeah.
It's just little things and little aspects within that track list that made me say, okay, I'm probably going to put it over. Maybe it was a past ranking, or maybe there was higher highs as far as songs go. So what went into your top list for today's episode, Lou?
I mean, like you said, a lot of the songs that I picked for that episode were part of some of the best albums of the decade. Not only that, I went back to look at what I picked in my top 10 list for previous years, and I had to do a lot of re-listening. More than anything, I had to check out if albums still sounded as good as they did upon like the first couple of listens, or when I had placed them so highly on certain lists. And there are surprises. Like, there's shit that surprised me in terms of maybe how high or lower ranked. But without further ado, bro, let's fucking get into this. What are your first 5 here?
All right, so I'm going to do 25 to 21. All right, so let's start this off. At number 25, I have Donda by Kanye West.
Wow, I made it.
Yeah, I made it. Number 24, I have Ethiops by Billy Woods. Number 23, I have Cheat Codes by Black Thought and Danger Mouse. Number 22, I have Pray for Haiti by Mac Homie.
Okay.
And number 21, I have Heroes and Villains by Metro Boomin. How about you? Go for it.
Very interesting picks. I didn't expect to see 2 of those, so we'll talk about that. But 25, King's Disease 2 by Nas.
Oh, whoa!
Yeah.
That's low!
It is.
That's low, Lou!
And you're telling me that Cheat Codes isn't low? That's the one that's
Come
fucking
on.
Cheat Codes over King's Disease 2.
Okay, let's
Who
keep
are we
going.
kidding? Okay, so 25, King's Disease 2. 24, this is gonna be another shocker because I expected this to maybe be like top 15. Burden of Proof by Benny the Butcher at
Not
24.
bad. Not a bad placement.
23, Ethiops by Billy Woods.
Okay.
22, GNX by Kendrick Lamar. And at 21, I have Haram by Armand Hammer and The Alchemist.
Great album.
So I got to ask about Donda because I thought about it. It ranked pretty highly for me when I did the 2021 list. But when it comes down to it, I just feel like all of that bloat is what made it just miss my 25. So
well, realistically, this is what the bloat is on this album for me. Okay, and Junior. Realistically, like that's what I'm looking at on the track list, and I'm like, you know what? Like those are pure skips. I will say this: it is a bloated album. You're right. I think that with the highs on that album, with the Life of the Party, songs like 24, songs like Come to Life, songs like Jesus Lord, Off the Grid, you name it, that track list is absolutely stacked. I think it has one of the most stellar track lists as far as features go for the 2020s decade. Some of the best production and beats that I heard throughout this entire decade come off of that album. For example, whether it's the choir vocals on God Breathe It, or whether it's, you listen to that soul sample in The Life of the Party, there's so much value within that. And for me, it was like, okay, I could get past it. And it ranked really high in my 2021 list. It's one of the biggest moments of the decade so far when it comes to an album release in the mainstream. And you could argue that it's Kanye's like last hurrah. It was legitimately like the last time you got that version of Kanye where he was competitive, he was in the zone, he was making his best ever music.
Yeah.
Even songs like Moon, bro, like I could give you like a dozen songs that would probably rank in like that amazing tier for me off of this album. So I think there's a lot of quality. The bloat brings it down. That's why it's not higher, but it had to crack it for me. But
yeah.
talk to me about Haram, all right? Because that was a project I was looking at. I don't have it. I don't have it within my top 25 list, but I respect it. So what went into that selection?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that went into it. I feel like they're definitely one of the more talented duos that we've seen emerge in the 2020s. There's even We Buy Diabetic Test Strips. That's a good honorable mention for me when it comes down to the decade. But you have to be in the mood for this one. You know, it's more of like a challenging listen. You have Billy Woods and Elucid that are essentially rapping in hieroglyphics. Like, you really have to, decode a lot of the bars on this project. But what really won me over was just the beautiful atmospheric production by The Alchemist, looking at something like Roaches Don't Fly and the electric guitar riffs and the sounds of crickets ringing off, and how
It's a super cinematic album.
super cinematic, and just so many unique beats. Even looking at like the masterclass of Falling Out the Sky that has synths that sound like they come from the cosmics, just beautiful. And then there's songs like Pepper Tree, where you have Billy Woods reminiscing and remembering what it was like to experience funerals in Jamaica as a kid. Like, just these song concepts and vivid writing that is unparalleled, and that's something that you'll find in a lot of Billy Woods' work from this decade. So had to bring in that album.
Speaking about a concept record, though, and Billy Woods, Ethiops. That's
Ethiops,
one of the
man,
better
yeah.
concept records of the 2020s. What was it that really made you look at this album and be like, okay, that's going to get a placement? Because I had it at 24, you had it at 23. So what was it? Was it Billy's writing? Was it the dark and like jazzy atmosphere to the production? There's certain songs on this album that make your skin crawl. So what made that selection for you?
Yeah, that's what it is. It's Preservation's production, which is dark, it's eerie, it's fucking anxiety-inducing at times. Like, it really feels like you're living through this crazy fever dream. And when it comes down to Billy's rapping, it's top tier, as you could expect. And like, that's really what brought it over the edge. It's just me marveling at his words and his poetry as a writer. But what about for you?
I think it was more the consistency of the track list as well.
The
Like,
sequencing is really solid on the album,
the
too.
track list is so well put together. It's so well thought out. And to be honest with you, I was thinking about putting Maps on my list. It did not. It's going to be an honorable mention. Maybe that's a bit of a spoiler, but regardless, so I think you guys expected it. I think for Billy Woods, if you really wanted to go with a solo album within the catalog, Ethiops was the way to go. But I want to talk about Heroes and Villains.
That's a surprise.
Yeah,
to see,
that's a big
'cause
one, right?
That did not make your top 10 list, if I'm not mistaken.
One of the
in
best
2022.
aging albums
Yes,
for
okay.
me as far as this decade goes.
Yeah.
Reason being, there was a lot of hype behind this album. It was Metro Boomin's return after, I believe, what was it, 5 years? Because 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. It was nearly 5 years since you got a solo studio album from Metro Boomin. And I can make so many arguments for this, bro. It's aging better than ever. It's probably the best trap album, in my opinion, of the decade so far. Songs like Metro Spider, songs like Trance, songs like Umbrella, Superhero. I could go through so many different tracks and make an argument for, not only the chemistry with the artist that he's with, whether it's, let's say, I don't know, a 21 Savage or a Future, but even, certain collaborations that you don't see coming, like a Feel the Fire, for example, with an A$AP Rocky and a Takeoff. That was a song that made your top 25 of the decade, and I understand why. It's those collaborations that buy me into the album. Yes, there's certain songs, example, like a Creepin', that I'm not a major fan of, but besides that, I look at certain songs on this, like, I'm not sure, even
Raindrops.
Raindrops, Niagara Falls. Like, bro, this track list is fucking
Walk 'Em
stupid.
Down, 21's part.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah,
it's just
fantastic. So you have this
yeah.
over We Don't Trust You.
I do.
Interesting.
I think the latter half of the album is much better than the latter half of We Don't Trust You.
Fair. I think
When
there's,
Feel the Fire, another
there's
song-
maybe an equal amount of like decent / mediocre songs on both.
And if I look at
Lock
the highs,
on Me is not that great. Looking at certain parts of Creep in the 21 verse, etc., like they both have flaws, I would say.
but I will give this the higher, like the highs in my opinion are higher on Heroes and Villains. Like, I take a Superhero over a We Don't Trust You, low-key, as far as a track goes.
Ooh, I don't know.
That's a toss-up, but that's
That's
another
tough.
thing that I have. Looking at a Trance, that would probably be a top 3 song off of the entire album, even Metro Spider, Umbrella. So, I don't know. That's just my taste, but that's what I'm looking at from this.
Let me tell you Kings Disease 2 and why it's not higher on my
Wait.
list.
Wait. Just have the convo with me. Just
Okay.
wait. Yeah, wait. I'll
Well, fuck, I don't want it to be top 5 and,
No, it's not top 5.
Okay.
It's not top 5. But anyways, let's keep going on with this. You want to go 20 to 16, right? That's where we're at next.
That is where we're at. What do you got?
Okay, so number 20, Dark Times by Vince Staples. Number 19, Bo Jackson by Boldy James and The Alchemist. Number 18, Pray for Paris by West Side Gun. Number 17, Burden of Proof by Benny the Butcher. And number 16, Drill Music in Zion by Lupe Fiasco. That's going to be my selections for that portion.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be albums that I wanted to have on my list that you just mentioned that aren't on it, and I think it's just because there's maybe some underground albums that I'm about to get into that I had to slot over them. But number 20 is going to be The Off Season by J. Cole. Number 19, As God Intended by Shay Noir and Apollo Brown. Number 18 is going to be Don't Go Tellin' Your Mama by Topaz Jones. Number 17, Miles by Blue and Exile. And then number 16 is going to be RTJ4 by Run the Jewels. Okay, so Pray for Paris, man.
One of the best curated albums of the decade so far. I'll give it that. The curation is top level. $500 ounces, 327. Just quality from start to finish all the way throughout. And I feel like it marked a moment for the Griselda movement where people were like, this is it. You know, like when I really think about what Griselda did in this decade, because I have full of their albums all over this list, I think Pray for Paris really marked a culturally important moment for hip hop, and that people were still valuing the essence of hip hop and curation. You know, there was a boiling point, right? Like you think about what West Side Gun did with Fly God, and of course, like Tana Talk 3 did Motion. Conway had a massive year as well in 2020. But at the end of the day, I really do feel like it was Pray for Paris. I think the impact of that album for the underground did so much, and the quality and the records that you're getting out of it are absolutely incredible. Even songs like Eurostep, for example, I can't speak enough about the quality and the production off this album.
Yeah, I think it's going to go down as one of the most iconic Griselda albums to ever exist. I think what just squeezed it out of my 25 were some of the solo West Side Gun tracks that I feel like when I'm looking at those versus, let's say, Benny the Butcher's performance on Burden of Proof, it doesn't really stack up in the sense of looking at songs like Le Joli Bas, for example, or even looking at Party with Pop Smoke, for instance. Like, there's a couple of those solo cuts that aren't as strong as the highs, because the highs on Pray for Paris are stupid.
But that's
bro.
what
Looking
I'm saying,
at George Bondo and $500 ounces, like, insane.
But example, I'm going to talk about the off seasons too, but even an album like the Off Season does have its weak points. You know, there's certain tracks within there where you're like, well, they don't stack up against the Climbback. They don't stack up against the other ones.
But
so
the lows are not as low as like a Pray for Paris low.
But
like 100 mil, like, I'm sorry, I'm taking 100 mil over, let's say, something like Party with Pop Smoke.
Yeah, but I mean, you're gonna really look at that song and knock it off of your list at the top 25.
Well, no, I'm
like
choosing
when you think about this decade,
the
you
off
think about
season because J. Cole's rapping is so much stronger than West Side Gun's rapping throughout the project.
But it's a different approach with the
production is really solid, even though it doesn't have like the luxury boom bap essence of Pray for Paris. Like, there's some serious beats on the off season.
No, I
as
agree,
well.
and you're going to see the off season on my list. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a better album. I just think you should have probably saved the spot for Pray for Paris. Top 25 of the decade.
It's tough, but again, there's albums like
I
As God Intended by Shay Noir that just trumpet for me in terms of rapping performance, in terms of the amazing production from Apollo Brown. Like, that was an album that just opened me up to the immense talent that Shay Noir was as an MC, and she had this knack to be competitive as an MC, giving you one of the best storytelling songs of the decade with 12 Hours. I don't want to spoil what the song's about, but it's absolutely gripping. You have her making statement tracks like Hustle Don't Give featuring Black Thought, and being able to, you know, go bar for bar with someone of the pedigree of a Black Thought, and giving you bars like I'm no killer but don't push me, or I have to react. Friends turned to OJ and left me stabbed in the back. And there's a clear clarity to Shay Noir and the way that she rhymes and the way that each line connects from one to the next. And it's an album that kind of gives you a psychological evaluation of her lacking a father figure, you know, living in these violent neighborhoods, and the unjust, you know, justice system, and how all of that contributed to shaping her into who she is. So, very underrated album, but I feel like it's one that deserves a mention without a doubt. But what else do we have? Anything else in common? No, I don't think we have anything else in common in this section of the list.
I don't think so at this point in time.
Read me through your 5 for this again.
Okay, so my 5 at this point would look like this. It would look Dark Times,
yeah,
Bo Jackson, Pray for Paris, Burden of Proof, and Drill Music in Zion.
So I got to ask you that. Is Bo Jackson the album you went with for Boldy, or do you have more than one here? Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
There's a big kahuna in the water.
Okay, that's it.
It's gonna be a big one.
I wanted to make sure you left him in the water. That's all, bro.
Absolutely. Come on, are you
Okay.
serious? But when it comes down to Bo Jackson, I mean, bro, the quality on that album is stupid. I mean, Brick Mountain, Montana, Double Hockey Stick, Steel Wool, stupid tracks all the way throughout. And I think the reason why I put it over The Price of Tea in China, I personally feel like the Alchemist's production on Bo Jackson's a bit more aggressive. It's a bit more interesting than The Price of Tea in China, where The Price of Tea in China is a bit more eerie. It's a bit more somber. But even at that, like, there's an aggressive nature to Bo Jackson. I feel like Bo Jackson is like Boldy James's Pray for Paris, for example, where it's going to go down as probably one of his most iconic albums. It's one of those albums that has so much accessibility, but yet the gangster talk and everything that went into that album just makes it feel so complete, bro. And it's an album I still revisit to this day. Joe Music in Zion, maybe you have it a bit higher. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I thought that it was a top 20 album of the decade. The concept was executed upon flawlessly. I really do prefer it over Samurai. I will say that. I think Samurai was a step down to this album. But regardless, back in 2022, I was super hyped to see Lupe Fiasco come back and deliver another concept record. So that cracked.
Yeah, I think if you look at it, like, that goes down as the best concept album in hip hop for the decade. If you really think about it, if you circle through the rest of your list, like, I don't have it in my top 10, spoiler alert, but to me it's the best concept album.
I think you could definitely make it. Depends if you look at another album and consider it.
Let me know what it is as we get to it.
It was the Big Kahuna, you know?
Oh, yeah?
Do you look at the Big Kahuna as like a concept record?
It is a concept record, but in terms of, like, just the originality of the concept and how it's executed, I still feel like Lupe gets it. But
yeah,
we
well,
can
he
talk
always
more
do
about
that with his penmanship, right?
Yeah, there's no one better at making concept records right now.
Whether it be
There's
songs
no
like
better.
Auto or other songs on there, like you can't even compare.
Precious Things, looking at the title track, Miss Mural.
Yeah, Miss
kidding
Mural
me?
is incredible.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
really one of the strongest track lists. So I had to bring that in. Burden of Proof by Benny. When
So this ranked at
Burden of Proof by Benny ranked at 17. for me.
W. Yeah.
So you want to talk about this?
Yeah, let's talk about Burden of Proof, bro. I think it stands still as, you know, one of the best Griselda albums to this point. Hit Boy came in with, like, this blueprint inspiration in terms of giving you this larger than life sound, coming in with these horns, these strings that feel very anthemic, and it was refreshing, bro. As a fucking Griselda fan, like, hearing all these dusty ass, like, boom bap soul samples that we love and that we praise, it was just a nice change of pace for Benny. And I think that in terms of delivering one-liners and getting more personal than he ever has before, showing you the battle scars in a song like Trade It All, where he raps about being willing to trade all of the money, all of the fame to get more time with his brother who passed
Even the
away.
posse
Like,
cuts with like war paint on that album. too.
Conway's verse.
Crazy Conway verse on that. Self-titled track is one of the best as well. Really a solid. Like, I was looking at Burden of Proof and I'm like, do I put Pray for Paris in front of it? No. Do I put Bo Jackson in front of it? No. Do I take Pray for Haiti? Do I put it in front of it? In my opinion, I don't personally.
Yeah.
Maybe you do, but yeah, Burden of Proof at number 17. So are we all good on this section?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to talk about the off-season, but I guess we can get to it.
I'm right here.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so move on.
Let's keep going on with this, okay? So this is going to be my 15 to 11.
Yeah.
This is where I'm going to have RTJ4 by Run the Jewels. This is where I'm going to have Blue Lips by Schoolboy Q. I'm going to have GNX by Kendrick Lamar. I'm going to have KD2 by Nas. And then after that, I'm going to have The Off-Season by J. Cole. That's going to be my 15 to 11. I think
Okay.
that's a really solid portion of my list.
All right, 15 to 11 for me. Here we go. Number 15 is Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers by Kendrick Lamar. Number 14, another West Coast album, Generational Curse by Ice Cold Bishop. At number 13, that's where I have Drill Music in Zion by Lupe Fiasco. Number 12, Cheat Codes by Black Thought and Danger Mouse. And then number 11, Call Me If You Get Lost by Tyler, the Creator. Just creeped out of my my top 10. And yeah, I have 10 albums that I think are better, and I'll get to those a bit later on. But we both had RTJ4. You had it at 15. I had it at 16.
Very close. I think it's probably one of the best albums that have came out of the South
Yeah,
for this
man.
decade out of this point.
Yeah, I think it was, as an experience, it felt like fucking getting an uppercut and a hook to the face. Like, it's an album that
Packs a punch.
packs a punch. It demands your attention. It's boisterous. It's brash. It's in your face. And I think it was an album that, like, at the time that it came out,
It was needed.
was so needed. It was so impactful. I think it was a week after the George Floyd event. And, in terms of giving you hip hop that's equally meaningful and entertaining. They really nailed it on that front.
The cultural aspects within that album, it's so interesting to go through it. I mean, it's so informative. It's raw, and like it's one of those albums that just makes you think and wants you to like. That's the reason why you want to go back, like especially going through the writing, like educating you on certain ideologies and certain points of view. Like even the Killer Mike rapping performances throughout that entire project, they're so passionate, they're so in line. And what's cool about this album is that they advanced the release date.
Yeah, they did.
They advanced the release date to make it more relevant to what was going on in the world at the time.
Yeah.
So that's a special album. But yeah, let's keep going on with this Blue Lips. So you have it in the top 10.
I have Blue Lips in the top 10.
Did not crack my top 10.
It's above Call Me If You Get Lost for me. I think in terms of artist performance, Schoolboy Q shows way more versatility to me.
In which ways? Which ways is he?
In which ways? I feel like as a rapper, like giving you something as bold and as aggressive as Year in 101 and as pop, and then giving you something that's super introspective and personal on Cooties or on Blue Slides. I felt like that was very special. You could argue that Tyler was more versatile in the sense of like he's giving you some singing performances. Yes, but I mean, Schoolboy Q's not a singer, so what the fuck do you want him to do, right? That being said, I feel like production-wise, it was a bit more out of the box. It was a bit more interesting to me, a bit more unique.
I'm also like, I'm looking at songs like Pop. I'm looking at songs like Movie. While I do think they're good songs at best, like I feel like it does weigh down the track list a bit for me when I look at the grander scope of this album and the experience. Also, talking about dynamic rapping performances for Call Me If You Get Lost, songs like Corso or Massa, collaborations like Hot Wind Blows, What's Your Name, the aggressive nature on Lumberjack. Like, I don't know, I feel like you can make that argument for Tyler as well. But let me talk about KD2 by Nas. So this was an album that just made the list. So let's have
just made the list, but
for you.
Oh, for me, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you wanted to have the conversation.
Yeah.
Now I said it wasn't going to be top 5. It was not top 5. This is an album that ranked actually at number 3 in my list for 2022. So you're like the biggest like KD advocator, and I end up having it higher than you do.
Yeah.
What's the reason? Like looking at this track list, I have it in front of me.
Well,
there's so much quality.
I mean, listen, I have nothing to really point out as flaws besides, a song like YKTV with A Boogie and YG, which was
out of place,
and a total attempt to be modern and current. But when it came to King's Disease 2, I feel like I'm getting more variety in terms of performances, maybe a bit more variety in terms of subject matter with other albums. But I do want to say that, like, out of this whole like Nas renaissance, I think KD2 and Magic are the strongest efforts, and you're getting like serious gems out of KD2. Like hearing him give his perspective on the East Coast West Coast beef on Death Row East, that was beautiful.
Even the way that he starts off the album with the pressure, that was great. Grandiose entrance. Listen to this track run after YKTV. If YKTV wasn't here, the track run from EPMD2 would be fucking incredible. Store Run, Moments, and Nobody, No Phony Love, Brunch on Sundays, Count Me In, Composure, My Bible, and Nas Is Good, bro. Come on.
Yeah.
The quality and the consistency is what really makes this track list for me. And it's like watching like Master Splinter come out and just do one more for old time's sake, or watching like Yoda come out and just whip out the lightsaber for one more battle. You know, like that's the way that I feel about this track list. And yes, obviously like 2023. No, at the end of 2022, you had gotten KD3, right? That was a December release, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or was that?
No, I think it was late in 2022, but
anyways, it was around that time.
Yeah.
He released this before. Hold on, bro. Is this a 2021 album? Yeah, I'm a fucking idiot.
Wait. KD2 was 21. KD3 is 22.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
There we go. But with KD2, I was just so impressed with the way that Nas was able to make his sound refreshing again. I think that's an incredibly hard thing to do when you're an MC that has dropped multiple albums over the course of multiple decades. You've been dominant for so long, so there's this expectation for you to deliver, and you have albums in here like an Illmatic, like a God's Son, like an It Was Written, and you gotta not play up to that level and deliver an album that's on that quality, but you have to live up to your name. You can't be delivering rebirths at this point in your career like Wayne is. You have to be able to come through and deliver something, and that's exactly what he did with KD2.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest accomplishments accomplishments from a rapper in this decade.
And I think what was special was the fact that he was able to adapt to the current climate. Like, you listen to a song like 40 Side, and like he is spitting over a trap beat and like adjusting his flows and rapping at a faster tempo, and you're like, wow, like he's really able to evolve as an MC and do it his way,
on his own terms,
for
right?
sure. And I think what's special too is Hit Boy. Hit Boy absolutely knocked it out of the park
Yeah,
here.
some
and
of
I
his
think
best
that,
ever beats are on
you know,
this album.
There's criticism. There's people that say, oh, well, Hit Boy doesn't have a distinguishable sound, and you can't hear a beat and say, oh, that's a Hit Boy beat. But to me, that's where his strengths lies. The fact that he can make any type of production that you ask him for, from a West Coast, you know, G-funk sounding beat to a more trap-oriented beat to some classic soulful boom bap. Like, you find it all within here, and he makes it all work in Nas's world. So that's a special album. And like I said, there's no real like flaws. It's just the albums in front of it are better to me. That's really what it comes down to.
So let's have the off-season conversation.
So
right?
I had it at 20.
I had it at 11.
At 11. Okay, so that's a big leap ahead of mine.
But I will say this, like, you know, looking at the offseason versus Burden of Proof, for example, that's at a 17, or a Bo Jackson, it edges it out a bit.
Yeah.
It's nothing too crazy. J. Cole came back. He decided to return. He dropped the Lewis Street EP pack back in 2020 with the Climb Back and with Lion King on Ice. And at that point in time, I remember thinking, I'm like, wow, we might be really getting the fall off. Well, you get the offseason instead, and this project kind of served as like I'll see you later type of project, right? Where it's like, here's some incredible music until I give you the magnum opus, which we're still waiting for. Let's see if it happens. We're 5 years into the decade so far, so I hope it ends up coming this year. But with the off season, I personally feel like J. Cole's maturity is at an all-time high. Looking at songs like Let Go of My Hand, you're getting passionate performances on songs like 95 South, which might be one of the best intro songs on any rap album from this decade.
Yes.
Looking at songs like even Applying Pressure, looking at songs like Punching the Clock, Hunger on Hillside. These are such low-key, underrated gems for Cole's catalog that speaks to his hunger, that speaks to his competitive nature. Even something like The Climb Back, I had that in my top 15 songs of the decade. I can't argue against it. Some of his best ever rapping performances. The off season's a fucking lock. But is there anything else you want to talk about in this section?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak about the offseason just because I feel like it's so rare to get a veteran who's at that stage in his career come back with that much fucking hunger in his raps. And even as someone that like doesn't have anything left to prove, at least from my point of view, from his, he felt like at the time he still had more to prove. And I just think that it was a great like lyrical exercise sort of album where he was gearing up for something greater than now we know is the fall off. And even looking at songs like Let Go My Hand and the evolution that shows in his pen, beautiful moments all throughout, and just some of the most confident and exhilarating rapping performances you could find in this decade. But yeah, the album that I do want to talk about for sure before moving on is Cheat Codes by Black Thought and Danger Mouse. And this felt like they said, fuck it. You know,
let's run it back.
Yeah, like we're already decades into our careers. We're already like established,
Let's
but
run back the
let's
clock.
make peak music again. Why the fuck not? And this is as good as it gets. Looking at songs like Aquamarine, looking at songs like Belize with MF Doom, this is a no bullshit album. It's 12 songs. There's messages packed into each and every single one. They all knock hard as fuck. There's not a second wasted on this album. And I love the production from Danger Mouse, bro. There's this rich antique feeling to the instrumentals where there's the vinyl crackles. There's these very old vocal samples and bass lines. It's like this very classy hip-hop music. It's like something that a Bond villain would play after like spinning some Johann Bach. Like he would put this album.
Well, Danger Mouse has such an interesting catalog, right? All the way from like the Gnarls Barkley, CeeLo Green stuff that he used to do, to now with someone like Black Thought. I feel like he makes such unique and I feel like cultured beats, if that makes sense to you. Listening to something like Aquamarine, it feels like an anthem, but like there's that subdued underwater sound to it. Like he has these contrasts to his production that I feel like brings so much to the table, and it was a match made in heaven. One of the best producer and rapper duos of the decade when it comes 100%. To output. But okay, let's get into the top 10, man. This is crazy.
So yeah, we have 10 to 6,
10
right?
to 6 up to this point.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go for it. Number 10, Scouring the Hose by JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown. Number 9, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers by Kendrick Lamar. Number 8, Chromacopia by Tyler, the Creator. Number 7, Utopia by Travis Scott. And number 6, Alfredo by Freddie Gibbs and The Alchemist.
Wow, that's low for Alfredo,
What
man.
do you mean? What do you mean, bro? It's my top 10.
It's Alfredo, bro. Okay,
I think I have 5 better.
This is cool because this is the section that we have the most in common, which I guess is kind of expected.
I think we're probably gonna have like all the same albums up to this
We're
point.
gonna have
like you're gonna have Blue Lips in here, obviously,
That's
which
right.
I don't have. But
So yeah, let me get to it. Number 10 is Utopia by Travis Scott. Number 9 is Chromacopia by Tyler, the Creator, not far off from Call Me If You Get Lost. Number 8 is I Laid Down My Life For You by JPEG Mafia, which I'm assuming is probably an honorable mention for you. Number 7, Blue Lips by Schoolboy Q. That's where it ranks. Was my album of the year for 24. And number 6 is where I have Scaring the Hose by JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown, which was...
so we're gonna have practically the same top 5.
Yeah. I think
Utopia
so. I'm
over
looking
Call Me
at
If You
it.
Get Lost.
Utopia over Call Me If You Get
Blue
Lost.
Lips
Yeah,
over Call
man.
Me If You Get Lost.
Yeah. Yeah. We already spoke about Blue Lips being over Call Me If You Get Lost.
Yeah, I know.
We already had that conversation.
Whatever. We're not gonna have it again. But let's talk about Utopia, right? Top 10 lock, easy. I had it at 7. It was my 2023 album of the year. It was your number 2 placement for 2023.
Yeah, I think it's easily like the most forward, like thinking and ambitious trap album. If you want to even label it a trap album, it goes way beyond. I would say the elements you typically find in a trap album, but I just think that in terms of like world building and having this expansive sound that ranges from older, soul sample based hip hop all the way to like futuristic, synth work that is reminiscent and builds upon the Yeezus sound. It was mind-blowing. It was truly mind-blowing.
And he lived up to the expectations with this.
Yeah,
right?
And
what
think
it did
about
from,
entertainment value. This is easily
absolutely.
a top 5 most entertaining hip-hop album of the decade.
Oh, I'd argue
If
it's
we
number 1.
Or number 1, yeah, bro.
For us,
in terms of like our reaction,
it's probably the best first reaction.
fuck,
we've had.
bro. I
because
mean,
it lived up to the expectations, right? The soundtrack and the curation was so well done. I will say this: I think it could have probably been a bit better. You take out songs like Del Resto from me.
Fuck yeah, it could have been better.
K-pop, you were like, dude, what the fuck is this doing as like the lead single, Del Resto, take out K-pop, Topia Twins, whatever. It does not matter.
It's a couple.
The beat switches, though, on this album.
Unreal.
My Eyes,
Unreal.
Schizo, holy shit.
The way Travis is rapping on
Sirens?
Hyena and My Eyes,
Bro,
and even Schizo, like the rapping performances are out of this world. And such a level up from Astro World and from Birds in the Trap Sing McKnight. Like he actually really focused on just sounding more charismatic and being more lethal, being more creative with the flows.
I think Hip Hop by the Numbers put out a statistic that this is his most rap-centric heavy album out of his entire catalog. So he brought something new to the table. Even songs like Modern Jam, the highs are so high within this track list. Let's talk about Scaring the Hose, okay? So similar portion to the list. I think it's a lock as the best collaboration album between two rappers for the decade.
It is,
right?
For sure. Yeah, I think when it comes down to Scaring the Hose, it was an album that, I guess you could say...
It's like watching Jackass.
Yeah.
This album is like watching Jackass. If you guys are a fan of like Jackass and like those types of movies where like you're engulfed in entertainment and it doesn't make sense, but it does make sense, that's the way that I feel about this album. It's like a big fuck you.
That's it. No, this is like a wet dream for like the fans of like weirdo rap and like the chronically online rap and that kind of subculture of hip hop. Like this was a wet dream, and I mean ultimately when you're looking at it, JPEG Mafia is giving you some of the most oddball, unique production and sampling that you'll find on any hip hop album of the 2020s decade, and just the way that they play off each other, the zaniness, and just all the quirks from Danny Brown shouting and JPEG Mafia coming at you, with bars about, him not wanting to pay for Twitter Blue, and like just it's a world that exists on its own, and it's one of those albums that isn't replicable by anyone else.
It's probably one of the most unique albums.
Easy, and that's why it's at 6 for me. It's the originality factor for sure.
It's so sick. Even the highs on this, like looking at a Perfect, the energy you get from that, you feel like you're playing Smash Bros.
Yeah, man.
You feel like you're in a car chase, speeding ahead. So Scaring the Hose is going to be a lock. Mr. Marlon, the Big Steppers.
That was number 9 for you and number, I think, 15 for myself.
So very close in rankings. I mean, just a couple of placements off. I can understand why it didn't make your top 10. It almost didn't make mine. I feel like it's the album that maybe brings the most value out of the decade when it comes to like
Okay.
writing and concept. I think it surpasses Scaring the Hose, The Off Season, KD2, Blue Lips when it comes to conceptual writing, the types of ideologies and the types of topics that he's tackling on songs, like example like A Father Time, our forward thinking, the production on United in Grief, Worldwide Steppers, and on songs like Mr. Morale, for example, that was produced by Pharrell. I'm listening to these beats and I'm like, the ear for production has never left, bro. Like the quality and the standard at which he produces at is at such a top tier level. That assassin is still within him. Not only that, but there's replay value within the track list, right? Looking at songs like, for example, Silent Hill or Die Hard, like I love going back to those tracks within it. So there's so much versatility with it. I will say this, like, there's songs that I don't go back to, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
But at the same time, even songs like Count Me Out, those are anthems, you know? Those are anthems for his catalog. And it's the best double album of the decade.
No, for sure.
It paid homage to, like, a craft that is so hard to master with the double album. There's so many artists that have attempted it, and it's came out bloated or it's come out disjointed. But with this, you have the acts, you have the therapy session, you have the two sides. It feels like this master play from Kendrick and this attempt at a magnum opus. It's one of the best written albums of the decade.
And I understand why he put so many tracks on it. I mean, we had to wait 5 years for new music. So for him, it was just about feeding the fans and doing it in a conceptual way. And he definitely accomplished that. And I just think that as a big Kendrick fan, to witness that personal evolution and actually just spill his guts, for lack of a better phrase, like he really just unveiled the curtain and spoke to us about generational trauma and trauma that was present within his own family, and like not wanting to, you know, relive the curses and repeat the curses, and step away from like that pedestal of being on the moral high ground, but still managing to be sitting on that pedestal in a sense of like, again, just showing us that he's human and that he's not above, you know, everyone else. So really special album, him giving you his therapy album. And I think that when it comes down to it, no, it's not an album that I'm playing more than something like, for example, Burden of Proof by Benny the Butcher. And like, I know there's gonna be comments about like, oh well, you're telling me that Ethiops by Billy Woods or RTJ4 is in daily rotation. Like, no, like this is not based on, these are the 25 albums that I listen to the most. You know, these are the albums that wowed me as a music fan, entertained me, and gave me the most enjoyable experience, even if that experience is once, twice, only 5 times, 10 times.
Super valid. I think people know the way we make our list.
I mean, yeah, hopefully so.
But you want to go into Chromacopia?
Yeah, let's talk about Chromacopia. So this ranked at number 9 for me.
Ranked at number 8 for me?
Yeah.
My album of the year?
I think it's Tyler's best work from the 2020s. I think that it's his best conceptual body of work. It's him reaching this crossroads in his career, and
the more that I sit with you, you're right. Like, it's arguably probably one of his best written albums.
Oh, it is easily. Like, that's really where he leveled up the most, is as a writer on this album, because you compare this to Call Me If You Get Lost. Sure, there's great writing on songs like Massa, etc., and Call Me If You Get Lost, but here, once again, it's sort of like his Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Maybe not as deep, but it does give you like those questions that he's pondering about, like how he wants to progress as a human, as an artist, what the future might hold. And even looking at him making songs like Him, and, you know, sort of going into this foray of like making this this somber pop ballad, that's still new for Tyler. So he's still, you know, giving you this ambitious spirit while giving you familiar sounding songs like Darling I, for example. So really impressed, bro, by Tyler. Like, he did it again.
And the production is just, it's incredible. Probably the best produced album of 2024. But okay, I think it's time for the top 5.
Before we get into that, let's say the honorable mentions, because in the top 5 we reveal the number 1. So let's get to the honorable mentions.
Bro,
first.
I have a whole list. Okay, so let's do this.
Yeah, just run through them.
Miles, As God Intended, 2000. Darkling demo tapes. Her Loss, KD3, Magic 1, I Lay Down My Life For You, Kiss the Ring, Few Good Things, LP by JPEG Mafia, As God Intended, Quaranta by Danny Brown. I have As God Intended twice here. I was really considering it for like a 20 placement. The House Is Burning by Isaiah Rashad, and The Price of Tea in China. Those are like some really solid albums where I was like, fuck.
All valid, man.
How about
I
you? What do
got
you got?
I got Her Loss, Drake and 21. I got 2000, Joey Badass. I got Heroes and Villains by Metro Boomin. LP, of course, by JPEG Mafia, one that I really considered. Same for Pray for Paris by West Side Gun. I fucking love that album. It wasn't enough to crack the 25. Smiling with No Teeth by Genesis Owusu. Circles by Mac Miller. I didn't really view it as a hip hop album through and through. So
But if it was a pure hip hop album, it would for sure be.
oh, 100%. Rich Ass Haitian by Mac Homie. God Don't Make Mistakes by Conway. Descendants of Cain by Ka. Reasonable Drought by Stove God Cooks. I really debated between that and like Burden of Proof just because it's a super slept on album. And then I have Visions of Bodies Being Burned by Clipping, which I just feel like I need to spend more time with to really assess. But all right.
No Pray for Haiti.
Pray for Haiti, I mean, maybe like in the top 40 range. I prefer Rich Ass Haitian over Pray for Haiti.
Really?
I think it's a stronger album, yeah.
Right, okay, interesting. All right, let's do the top 5, man. So my top 5 goes like this. At number 5, Mangar McNichols by Boldy James and Sterling Tolls. At number 4, Call Me If You Get Lost by Tyler, the Creator. Number 3, I have Melt My Eyes, See Your Future by Denzel Curry. Number 2, The Forever Story by JID. And number 1, Sometimes I Might Be Introvert by Little Sims.
Wow, okay. Surprised to see The Forever Story over Melt. You came down to it?
I did it.
All right, I'm going to give you my 5. It's very similar. Number 5 is Manger on McNichols by Boldy James.
Is it Manger or is it Manger?
Yeah, so we kept calling it Manger for the longest time. I always thought it was Manger, but then I'm like, wait a second. He's like the references to like Jesus and the manger, and like there's even an allusion to that on the album cover. So it is Manger on McNichols.
It's absolutely Manger.
Number 4 is Melt My Eyes, See Your Future by Denzel Curry. Number 3 is Where I Have Alfredo by Freddie Gibbs. Number 2 is The Forever Story by Jid. And number 1, Sometimes I Might Be Introvert by Little Sims. Let's start off by talking about Manger on McNichols by Boldy and Sterling.
So we got it at the top 5. Did you start your list off that way by any weird chance? Were you like, yeah, this goes 5? I don't know why. I kind of looked at it and I'm like, yeah, that looks nice at 5.
Like the top 5 was the easiest to put together. Like I knew that Simbi was gonna be one. I knew The Forever Story was right behind it. And
my
then
top 3 was easy to do.
Then it was like Alfredo or Manger, like which one? But speaking about Manger on McNichols, when you look at like the story of how they put this album together, it's fucking insane because these are all vocals that Boldy mostly recorded from 2007 to 2010 when he was still like peddling drugs in Detroit and was making music, but it wasn't really a full-time
But that's
gig.
what I'm saying though, is that like even looking at records like Detroit to River Rock, right? You hear those vocals and you understand where the writing's coming from within those records. That's what I'm saying is that, remember I was talking about the concept on the Big Kahuna? Like, do you consider this a concept record?
This is a concept record because it's about someone feeling trapped in their own city and feeling trapped by the lifestyle that they chose, and also simultaneously feeling trapped by like institutions like the jail system, because that's a big topic on the outro here. And going back to like just the backstory, I think not all the credit, but a lot of the credit has to go to Sterling Tolls, because Boldy rapped over like just bare bones, like boom bap beats and soul samples. Then years later, within a decade, Sterling Tolls brings in a cello player. He brings in an electric bassist, and he forms these captivating live jazz instrumentals. And I think it is the best rap jazz produced album since To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar.
Oh, absolutely.
It is really on that level, and I think that what's genius about it more than anything is that the backing vocals and the strings on these records, like they linger, they crawl, and they sort of capture the dread and the gloom of Boldy's stories and emotions that are all shaped by his experiences in Detroit. And when you're looking at the highs on this album, Detroit River Rock, Mommy Dearest, Got Flicked, like masterpieces of records.
And this is an album, like you were mentioning before, that is not based on solely replay value. If my replay value was the most important thing that went into this top 25, Bo Jackson would be in front of it, right?
Yep,
or
facts.
even Loki, the price of Tia China, or like a Tecmo Bo, for example, would be in front of it. But with Manger on McNichols, it's a really special album. It's top 5 of the decade. But Call Me If You Get Lost, the reason why I had it in the top 5,
that's high.
It's the total package as far as a rap album goes for this. I think that You could argue that there are certain albums that are maybe produced better. Even that's a bit of a reach. Tyler is one of the best producers in the industry right now.
I think production is the best argument for it being top 5, by the way.
Well,
Definitely.
no, because it's his most rap-centric, heavy album, and it was him going back to the mixtape days and providing a similar concept that you'd gotten on Igor, but flipping it on its back and bringing you these new perspectives and these incredible song concepts. Not only that, but the unpredictability factor, of some of these collaborations. Like looking at NBA YoungBoy and What's Your Name, the way that he was able to get him on this track list and make such an iconic song for Tyler's catalog. Looking at songs like Safari or Wilshire, those are incredible storytelling cuts for his catalog. Some of the best storytelling cuts, in my opinion, of the entire decade. Hot Wind Blows. You've spoken about the fucking Geneva winds on too many podcasts up to this point,
man.
but I could go on
Yeah,
about that.
this album is
it's special. Like there's so much value to go. I think it's one of the most well-rounded albums when it comes to replay value, production, collaboration, track list strength, rapping performance. For me, in my opinion, it strives everywhere. It's like the Ruud Gullit, bro, of fucking rap albums for me. It would have every stat over 90. There's so much to take out of it, and the track list is extremely strong. Even the double track is so well done too, bro. I really can't speak
it's such a good time. I think in terms of enjoyability with albums, I haven't enjoyed myself as much with some other albums that maybe I have a bit higher, and it's just because it's the perfect fucking vacation album. But the reason why I have something like Alfredo by Freddie Gibbs above it is it really comes down to the rapping performances. When you're looking at the vicious flows on something like God Is Perfect, or getting one of the best mafioso rap songs of the decade with Frank Lucas, and hearing Freddie's ability to mix the brutal side of the gangster rap with the more emotional and introspective side of it on songs like Baby Shit. I don't know how he manages to balance so many different tones.
I can't believe
and make
I tried
it
to
work.
convince you that this was the best album of 2020.
What do you mean you try to convince me?
Remember when you had Burden of Proof
Yeah,
over it?
yeah.
I'm like, it's not even a competition. Honestly, this is really up
It
there.
should have won the Grammy, bro. It really should have won the Grammy. Even the 1985 fucking guitar riff sample, you're not
Stupid.
finding that anywhere else. Something to rap about.
Scotty Beam.
It's just it's a perfect album.
It's a phenomenal album.
It's a perfect album.
But okay, Melt
yeah.
My I See Your Future. The reason why I feel like I've kind of switched my tune with this one, and I think it's the right time to do it.
That's what I'm the most curious about. What made the Forever Story go ahead of it?
I think the latter half of the Forever Story is a bit better put together.
All right.
The highs are highers. The highs are higher, when it comes to standalone tracks. So example, Melt Session #1 and songs like Walkin' were #1 and #3 placements. Kind of like a Thank God For Me and Blue Slide situation for 2024. But, songs like Ain't No Way. I'll go to other songs.
Troubles.
Zaytoki. They're solid.
They're good, but
It's not it's not better than Money. It wouldn't be better than System M. It wouldn't be better than Stars or Louder 2.
Yeah.
I feel like the second half of the track list is a level above Melt My I See Your Future. So when it comes down to it, you could play that game of deciding what you want. I think the rapping performances are on par, in my opinion. I think the writing is maybe just a tad more intricate on the Forever Story.
even that's pretty. It's pretty neck
But
and neck.
it's a toss-up.
Yeah.
Right? And then if you want to go on to the features, I would probably go into the Forever Story.
For sure.
Production, I go into Melt My Eyes. That's why I have this at a 2 and a 3. It's so close, bro.
Yeah.
It's the year that was dominated by the Forever Story and Melt My Eyes. You'll never, that's that year. There's nothing else that comes close for me.
You know what I realized too is that I think that my list, if I look at which year has the most selections, I think 2020 ended up being the most dominant after 2022. Which 2022 obviously had amazing albums, but that surprised me because 2020 was looked at as this COVID year where not much happened.
There was a lot of serious shit that came out in that year.
Yeah, but back to what you were saying about Melt My Eyes. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that it's a very different album than the Forever Story, but the strengths lie equally on a lot of different fronts. But I think that the performance to me feels a bit more complete with the Forever Story. He literally got vocal training to be able to deliver amazing performances and soulful ballads like Cody Blue 31 and improve his hook ability on something like Bread and M and Better Days, for example. And I think that this is just an album that had a beautiful amount of range, bro, more than most albums in the 2020s. And what's cool too is that like production wise, it encompasses some of like the aesthetics that he grew up loving, like old school boom bap and neo soul, but also sounds of today, like trap and like psychedelic hip hop as well on something like a Stars. So it had a range in all departments in terms of his performances, the production. Looking at a song like 2007 perfectly, makes the whole album come full circle. And thank God that ended up being added to the track list because
It's like his last call, right?
Yeah.
Or it's like the Pound Cake, for example.
so essential.
It's so essential. It's one of those hip hop songs, and it's probably one of my most played songs off of the album up to this point. But let's end off this episode with that one special album. Sometimes I Might Be Introvert.
And
by
this
Lil
is
Sims.
funny because we once did, you guys could check it out on the channel, by the way, a 2020s rap album bracket. And we decided to not put this album in because it would have been too clear. Like it's too overpowered of an album, and it would have went to the finals and won. But yeah, this is Lil Sims' magnum opus. Obviously, she has other fantastic albums like Gray Area, but this album, we said it multiple times that we fucked up with the score that we gave it when we reviewed it because we gave it an amazing rating, and coming back to it time and time again, it's flawless.
It probably gets the perfect, right?
Oh, easy.
So
Easily gets the perfect when it comes
the
to this.
range from Little Sims on this album is just beautiful. It feels like a reincarnation, if I could say that, of the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill to a certain extent.
It's very similar to Miseducation.
I
yes.
feel like it plays on that same level. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I don't give a fuck. I'll say it. Something like Inflow's production and how grandiose that entire soundscape sounds. It's been a pleasure to be able to revisit this album, especially for these lists, because I get to analyze it again and I get to put on my glasses and just have fun. And you realize all the intricacies and everything that went into this. It's beautiful from start to finish. The important political messaging, owning up to herself and being, happy in her own skin and talking about her background with storytelling tracks like Little Q Part 1 and Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that went into this album. It's a magnum opus. It's a perfect album.
It is.
And it's the number one. Like, it was the easiest placement on this list.
Yeah. And I also can't remember like the last time that like a debut hip hop album came out and I thought to myself like, holy shit, like this is the making of a great right here. Like this is going to be an album that really stands the test of time, and it already has 4 years later actually almost. And when it comes down to it, I think that there isn't a better produced album. You can maybe try to argue for like all the crazy beat switches on the Forever Story or the amazing production on Manger on McNichols, but what Inflow brought to this with the orchestral feel, it's like James Bond score level music. Like that's really the type of music that you're getting on here. And 19 songs and manage, like, bro, where are you gonna find a 19 song album today that's entertaining from start to finish, that has by the way, a big complaint for people are like the interludes and the skits. I love that part of the album.
It has so much
think
cinematic value, and it makes it seem like a whole movie, right? Like,
yeah,
it had so many, I would say, bridges between songs to songs, and whatever. If you guys are complaining about Simbi, I don't know what to tell you
and
at this
I think
point.
there's a lot of people that are maybe watching this that have never listened to the album. Guys, please do yourselves the favor.
I think it's revered, though. I think people understand how important this album is for the decade. But, guys, that's the list. That is the list. 25 all the way to 1. Honorable mentions mentioned. Guys, let us know, where did we get it right? Where did we get it wrong? And thank you. I mean, looking at this list, we've reviewed so many of these albums. I remember nights listening to these albums with you guys for the first time. Shout out to the Patreon plan. Most of these albums actually are available for like our live album experience. If you guys want to see the first time we reacted to a Melt My Eyes, what else did we do? We did Utopia. Chromacopia was you and Nick. Mr. Morales carrying the hose. It's all there for you guys. So thank you for a wonderful decade so far. So much quality, so much more to come, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Peace, guys.